Welcome back to A Course in Miracles and Practice. We are so glad you were joining us as we continue this really intensive exploration through the workbook.
It's excellent to be here.
We've definitely reached the final segments of this journey, and you can feel it. The core focus of the lessons has sharpened considerably, and they're demanding a much deeper examination of our fundamental beliefs.
And today, we are turning our attention to Lesson 337, which offers just a powerful, concise statement about where our true defense lies.
It seems like this lesson asks us to shift entirely away from what we normally think of as defense. You know, those external walls or psychological barriers.
Exactly. It wants us to root our sense of safety in what we inherently are, our fundamental identity.
That premise is revolutionary. I mean, especially for a mind like mine, and I think for most of us, that's just so accustomed to vigilance and self-protection.
The core idea here is that our inherent identity, our self, is the only real barrier against harm.
And we spend so much energy, don't we, constructing these intricate physical and mental barriers, trying to buffer ourselves against what feels like a hostile world.
This lesson suggests those defenses are actually completely redundant if we simply know and accept who we are.
It's about moving from protection based on doing to protection based on being.
That's a perfect way to put it. And before we really delve into the intricate psychology of that shift, we want to hear from you. We know these later lessons can bring up some profound shifts and sometimes profound resistance.
We really want to know how you're experiencing these concepts as they become more and more direct.
We welcome your feedback, your questions, any insights you might have. You can reach us via email.
That email is acim@theworldharmonyproject.org.
Or you can connect with us directly on social media. We're on TikTok and YouTube, and the handle for both is @theworldharmonyproject.
We really do appreciate the thoughts and the shared experiences you contribute. It makes this whole process feel so much more collaborative. Okay, let's prepare our minds now for the text itself. This is Lesson 337.
My sinlessness protects me from all harm.
My sinlessness ensures me perfect peace, eternal safety, everlasting love, freedom forever from all thought of loss, complete deliverance from suffering. And only happiness can be my state, for only happiness is given me.
What must I do to know all this is mine? I must accept atonement for myself and nothing more. God has already done all things that need be done.
And I must learn I need do nothing of myself, for I need but accept myself, my sinlessness, created for me now already mine, to feel God's love protecting me from harm, to understand my Father loves his Son, to know I am the Son my Father loves.
You who created me in sinlessness are not mistaken about what I am. I was mistaken when I thought I sinned, but I accept atonement for myself. Father, my dream is ended now. Amen.
We have to begin with a word that I think gives so many students pause. Sinlessness.
It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? In traditional context, that word implies moral perfection, a ledger with no errors, a completely clean behavioral record.
Right. And that interpretation is precisely what's being overturned here. It's a word that's just so loaded with guilt and religious history.
For many people, just hearing sinlessness instantly triggers a feeling of unworthiness.
Of course. Because we know we're not, behaviorally speaking, perfect. So how does the Course redefine this concept so radically that it becomes the source of our protection instead of a standard we constantly fail to meet?
Well, the key is in the definition of sin itself. The Course defines sin as the belief in separation from God. That's it.
So it's a thought, a belief, not an action.
And that belief translates directly into the experience of guilt. So therefore, sinlessness is simply guiltlessness.
Guiltlessness, okay.
It's a metaphysical statement about your reality as a creation of love, not a moral judgment on your temporary actions here in the world.
So when the lesson says, my sinlessness protects me, it's really saying my absolute inherent guiltlessness protects me from anticipating or deserving punishment.
You've got it. That distinction is absolutely vital. If sin were about behavior, then protection would require constant behavioral modification.
Which would make our safety feel so tenuous, so conditional.
Constantly. But if sinlessness is about identity, a state of being that cannot be altered by temporary behavior, then protection is constant, unconditional, and guaranteed.
Like we all carry around this deeply ingrained background program that's running beneath every single interaction.
Yes, and that program often asserts some version of, I am flawed, I made a mistake 10 years ago, I am not good enough.
Therefore, I am vulnerable.
Exactly. This foundational belief dictates all our defensiveness. If I believe deep down that I am fundamentally wrong, then I have to constantly anticipate the consequences. I have to be on guard.
That makes perfect sense. The anticipation of the other shoe dropping isn't a response to an actual external threat. It's a response to an internal verdict that I've already passed on myself.
Right. If I convict myself, I automatically create the expectation of retribution. And that expectation is what makes the world feel so hostile.
And just think about the sheer amount of energy that takes.
Many of us don't even realize how much psychological effort goes into managing our image appearing competent or strong to avoid being exposed or judged.
We mistake this exhausting process of image management for actual survival.
It's a constant curation of the self. We believe our safety lies in maintaining this acceptable facade, hoping the world will just, spare us its criticism.
So we're trying to earn safety by appearing perfect, rather than recognizing that safety is our inherent birthright.
And this lesson is calling us to stop seeking safety through these defenses and instead to just look to our source. If the flaw, the belief in sin, isn't real, then all the defense mechanisms we designed to hide that flaw.
They're not just unnecessary.
They're actively harmful because every time we use them, we're reaffirming that false belief in separation.
I often think of people who are masters of this self-management. They seem so impeccably composed on the surface. But so often, just beneath that surface, there's an incredible amount of anxiety and effort. And it's all fueled by this deep conviction that if they drop the awk for even a second, they'll be punished.
Right. That anxiety is the cost of guilt. Guilt always breeds anxiety because it demands punishment. If you are guiltless, sinless, there's no longer any penalty to fear.
And that changes how we see the world around us. If my sinlessness protects me, then the external world, the environment I'm navigating, loses its power to inflict any real, lasting damage on myself.
Exactly. Which moves us into a deeper discussion about this idea of the harmless dream.
Right. I struggle with that phrasing sometimes. Because to the ego, the world does not feel harmless. Accidents happen. People betray us. Illness strikes. So how does sinlessness neutralize those very real feeling threats?
The neutralization happens entirely within the mind's interpretation. That's the only place it can happen. Sinlessness doesn't guarantee the body won't experience pain.
Okay, that's important.
It guarantees that the self will not experience condemnation. When the lesson says, my sinlessness protects me from all harm, it means protection from harm to the self.
And since the self is spirit, and spirit is invulnerable,
then the only possible harm must come from an idea. The idea that you sinned and therefore you deserve to suffer.
The harm is not the event itself. It's never the event. It's the internal interpretation of the event as a punishment or as proof of my fundamental unworthiness.
Yes. If I lose my job, the financial hardship is a practical problem to be solved. But the harm, the suffering, comes from me deciding that this loss proves I'm a failure who deserves to struggle.
The world is a harmless dream then, because it lacks the capacity to judge or condemn you at the level of reality.
It's just a screen. The moment you accept your sinlessness, you recognize that the external environment is merely reflecting back the movie of separation, and that movie has no power over you, the viewer.
I want to explore that psychological shift in a really concrete scenario, because that's where this gets real.
Good.
I mentioned earlier those moments when frustration just boils over, say, I'm stressed, trying to rush, and I snap angrily at my children. In that immediate aftermath, the guilt it's just instant.
It kicks in instantly because the ego's entire mechanism defines behavior as identity. In that moment of snapping, you temporarily drop the identity of the Holy Son of God and you pick up the label bad father.
Yes, that's exactly it. Bad father. I allow a momentary behavioral failure to redefine my entire being.
And this self-labeling is what the Course identifies as the practical, lived experience of sin.
And once I accept that label, I immediately feel profoundly unsafe. I start bracing myself for consequences. I remember interpreting my partner's glance, which was likely just concern, as this silent, condemning judgment.
That is the textbook definition of projection that results from guilt. Once you have established the internal verdict of guilty within your own mind, you cannot tolerate innocence externally.
Wow. Say that again?
You cannot tolerate innocence externally. You must project that condemnation outward to justify your internal state. You perceive judgment because you had already judged yourself.
So the immediate consequence of me labeling myself bad is that I transform bystanders, my partner, my kids, into judges and accusers even before they say a single word.
You initiate the attack by defending yourself against a condemnation that you've just assumed is coming.
It's a closed loop of self-attack then. The belief in my own sin makes me perceive hostility in completely neutral stimuli.
Yes, you start defending yourself before any accusation is even made, which essentially confirms to your own mind that an attack is imminent. The conviction that you are flawed requires the world to validate that flaw through perceived attack.
The real insight here, for me, is that the true harm I felt in that moment wasn't the external event, the snap, but my own interpretation of that event as proof of my unworthiness. All the emotional chaos that followed was entirely self-inflicted.
And if you could apply lesson 337 right in that moment, my sinlessness protects me from all harm, what would happen?
I would recognize the mistaken behavior, acknowledge the need to correct it, maybe apologize, but I would fundamentally reject the label bad father.
That separation between action and identity is the absolute key to maintaining peace, isn't it?
It is. I would say to myself, I made an unloving choice just now, but my reality remains love.
And what happens to your partner's glance then? If you know your identity is safe, that it's protected, you don't need to interpret their look as a threat.
It just remains what it is, a look of concern maybe, or even gentle inquiry. It holds no power over my established innocence.
And the defense mechanisms instantly become unnecessary.
That shift is so revolutionary because it means the attack is literally always originating from inside our own minds. We are our own internal prosecutors, and we just appoint the external world to be the jury.
If the verdict is sinless inside your mind, the reflection the world offers can be nothing more than neutral, even when it seems challenging. It's incapable of piercing your protection.
The shift lesson 337 requires is to stop seeking external proof of our failure and start resting in the internal fact of our metaphysical perfection.
Yes, it's a shift from seeking to resting.
I do find myself wondering about the limits of this, though. What if the external event is genuinely hostile? What if the glance isn't concern, but it's genuine, cold disapproval? Does my acceptance of sinlessness mean I am protected from the feeling of being disapproved of when the disapproval is real?
That is a crucial question. It really grounds this whole concept. And the answer is yes. Your sinlessness protects you from the harm of disapproval, not from the disapproval itself.
Okay, the harm of it.
The disapproval of another person can only harm you if you believe their judgment is more powerful or more true than God's judgment of you.
So if I know I'm innocent,
then another person's judgment of your behavior or your character is simply their mistake. It's based on their own fear, their own projection.
so their external hostility becomes their problem, not my identity crisis.
Exactly. The moment you accept your guiltlessness, their attack loses all its leverage because you no longer provide the target for it, which is the belief that you might deserve it.
That is the mechanism of protection. You become safe because you are no longer projecting your own hidden guilt onto the interaction. You neutralize the perceived threat, regardless of what the other person is doing.
Precisely. Which moves us into what I find to be the most radically challenging statement in the entire lesson.
I think I know what's coming. I must learn I need do nothing of myself.
That's the one. This is a profound challenge to how we operate in, well, virtually every area of our lives.
It's a direct confrontation with the ego's entire operating system.
The ego teaches us that safety is achieved only through continuous doing. Explaining, fixing, apologizing, defending, strategizing, manipulating circumstances to restore a perceived good image.
The ego demands action to earn our worthiness and maintain our status.
Western culture especially just reinforces this belief that effort equals worthiness. We're taught that if we suffer a setback, we have to immediately pivot, hustle, overcompensate.
And the idea of just stopping, of accepting that safety was never actually lost, feels not just dangerous, but almost negligent.
If you stop trying to fix your image, the ego warns that you'll instantly be exposed as a monster or a fraud or a victim who failed to defend themselves.
The fear is that without this constant management, this guilt-driven course correction, chaos will just take over.
Right.
We believe we can somehow manually override the mistake we think we made during the separation.
But the lesson reminds us that the job is already finished. God has already done all things that need be done.
And if God created you sinless, then any effort you put forth now to achieve sinlessness is based on the mistaken belief that God's creation was incomplete or failed and needs your help.
That introduces a deeply humbling thought, doesn't it? Our frantic efforts to correct ourselves are actually acts of arrogance.
They imply that we know better than God how to secure our own holiness, or that we have to compensate for a flaw He somehow allowed to exist.
It is the ultimate expression of the ego, this belief that you, as a fragmented self, must take control and manage your own salvation.
And the simple act of stopping, of just sitting still and accepting that your worth is intrinsic, directly challenges the ego's claim to power.
It does. And what I find so difficult about this is the uncomfortable silence it creates when you apply it to real life. For instance, in social dynamics, or say in dating, if someone doesn't respond to a message.
The immediate impulse is to do something to manufacture worthiness.
That anxious energy requires an outlet. It demands you send another text, make a call, or post something on social media designed to earn attention or prove your value.
We can't tolerate the void, because that void feels like a confirmation of our unworthiness. The stillness feels like potential annihilation.
And the discomfort of just sitting still and accepting that God has already done all things that need be done is so profound because it forces us to confront that core belief, the belief that our existence is conditional on our effort or on external validation.
The shift is from manufactured worthiness to inherent worthiness.
Yes, our value, and therefore our safety, is not something we construct and maintain through constant maintenance and self-correction. It's intrinsic. It's baked into our creation.
And the practice of this lesson is simply relaxing into that intrinsic state.
Let's consider this in the context of a major life upheaval, a financial crisis, the loss of a relationship, a professional failure.
The traditional response is just a flurry of activity driven by panic. Explain why it wasn't my fault, blame others, desperately seek quick fixes.
The ego demands that we act to restore our good standing, to prove we are still capable and worthy.
But the lesson advises us to just be the sinlessness that protects us. It advises us to halt the ego's frantic reaction and remind ourselves that this external loss cannot touch the self.
So if safety is intrinsic, the external landscape, no matter how turbulent, cannot fundamentally threaten my identity. I can address the practical matters of the crisis, find a new job, file the paperwork, but I don't have to carry the emotional burden that this event proves I am fundamentally inadequate.
The ego demands we earn love and safety. The lesson affirms that we are love and safety. Therefore, no effort is required to maintain it.
The only thing required is the acceptance of this truth. The moment we stop trying to do our way back home, we realize we never left.
This inherent safety leads to that radical promise of complete deliverance from suffering. This is where the metaphysical application meets physical reality.
If we define suffering as resistance to reality that's based on guilt, then deliverance simply means ending that internal mechanism of prosecution.
So when we accept our sinlessness, we stop projecting our guilt onto the world. And by doing that, we remove the main source of our own pain.
That's the idea. We often equate suffering with physical pain or external hardship. But if I'm protected from suffering, does that mean I won't feel pain when I break my arm?
Or does it mean the pain I feel just loses its spiritual significance?
That is the essential distinction. The body, because it's part of the dream, remains vulnerable to the laws of the dream, sickness, injury, aging.
Of course.
However, the suffering that the lesson promises deliverance from is the interpretation of that pain.
It's the fear that physical failure is proof of spiritual failure.
Exactly. When the body malfunctions, it is so easy to feel betrayed or flawed, particularly as we age. We see the body's decline as some kind of proof that we weren't good enough or that we deserve to be punished.
That's where the suffering is located, in the mind interpreting physical symptoms as moral consequences.
But if I shift my focus to the sinless self in my mind, the physical symptom, the ache, the virus, the fatigue, remains a biological event, but it loses its power to terrify.
It loses its emotional leverage over my sense of identity.
Right. The body might still be dealing with its temporary condition, but that deep, gnawing fear that the sickness is a judgment against my soul lifts, and that is the complete deliverance.
So the sickness remains a symptom of the dream, but it can no longer threaten the reality of my eternal safety.
It's the difference between physical discomfort and psychological terror. The fear of death, for instance, isn't just the fear of physical cessation.
No, it's the fear of a final judgment.
And if sinlessness is guaranteed, then that ultimate terror is removed. That's why the lesson guarantees eternal safety and everlasting love. If those are facts, then temporary discomfort or loss in the physical realm cannot equate to true suffering.
Because true suffering would imply a loss of self, which the lesson assures us is impossible.
We should clarify this point even further because it's often misinterpreted. Deliverance from suffering does not mean we're shielded from all discomfort, nor does it mean we become indifferent to the pain of others.
It means external events lose their power to take away our peace.
And our peace is protected because we stop viewing external challenges as evidence of our unworthiness or our sin. If a disaster strikes, we can respond practically and compassionately, but we aren't paralyzed by the terror that this disaster somehow signifies our failure.
This all ties back beautifully to that one requirement. I must accept atonement for myself and nothing more.
And the atonement in this context is not a sacrificial act. It's the correction mechanism for the single error of believing that separation is real.
Atonement is simply the recognition that the separation never actually occurred.
So when we accept atonement, we're just accepting the correction for our misperception. We're realizing we were mistaken when we thought we sinned.
If the error is the belief in separation and the correction, the atonement is the realization of non-separation.
Then accepting atonement is simply accepting our inherent, unified state of sinlessness.
The problem is always the same. The belief that we're separate and sinful, which leads directly to vigilance, projection, and suffering.
And the solution is always the same. The acceptance of our true nature. When we accept that we are sinless, we are safe from the ego's attacks because we have withdrawn our belief from the ego's entire premise, that we are flawed and deserving of punishment.
And that realization creates true, fundamental freedom. It's the freedom to exist without the constant, heavy burden of managing an image we feel we have to earn every single day. We can just drop the heavy armor.
The practice today, as the lesson suggests, is not about doing spiritual gymnastics to feel worthy. It's a practice of inhabiting the feeling of safety that comes from knowing our perfection is a done deal.
It's an act of deep kindness toward ourselves.
It is. We are invited to acknowledge our perfection even when our temporary behavior misses the mark. We accept atonement for ourselves and nothing more, recognizing that we were fundamentally mistaken when we thought we sinned.
So today, if you feel that loss of peace, or that familiar, exhausting urge to defend or explain yourself, pause.
Just pause. And remind yourself that you are innocent. Your sinlessness is a fact that protects you, not a goal you must achieve through effort. You need do nothing of yourself to secure the safety that is already yours.
We've spent this exploration looking at how the mind projects its internal guilt outward, creating judges out of bystanders and enemies out of neutral situations. Lesson 337 ends with that powerful, simple affirmation. Father, my dream is ended now.
And that declaration suggests a total cessation of the hallucination of guilt and fear.
So here's something to think about. If you truly fully accepted that your innocence means nothing in this world can harm the real you, What concrete judgments or conflicts are you currently projecting onto the world that would be instantly neutralized?
What arguments would you simply refuse to show up for today because you already know the verdict is in your favor?
Thank you for joining us for this profound exploration into Lesson 337.
We look forward to continuing this work with you.
We will see you next time for Lesson 338.